Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and this channel is all about role-playing reviews, game master tips, and adventure overviews. Now, sometimes when I look for the perfect one-shot adventure, I go hunting, looking for adventures that are not the mainstream ones. And sometimes I go way back in the past and find relics from decades ago to see if they're still worth playing today. And other times I comb through new releases like on DriveThruRPG, looking for gems created by indie creators like me. I really think that it's just a wonderful thing that so many game companies make their game systems freely available for fans and creators. I found some really excellent adventures for some of my favorite game systems like Vaesen and Call of Cthulhu that never would have seen the light of day if it weren't for the generosity of these game companies just opening up their licenses to the masses. So while on the hunt for a cool new adventure, I stumbled across Jungle Rot, an indie fan-made adventure for Achtung Cthulhu, which is itself an RPG that's all about mishmashing Cthulhu horror and World War II action. And for me, that's such a cool combination. It's like chocolate and peanut butter because I love historical horror and I also really love pulp adventures. And the fact that Jungle Rot is set in the Pacific Theater, well, that made it feel pretty unique compared to a lot of other World War II adventures I've played in, which are typically set in Europe with the players hunting down Nazis. So I picked up Jungle Rot, wrangled a group of players, and I ran it. How'd it go? Well, if you think you're brave enough to go behind enemy lines and find out, then put your M1 helmet on and get ready for some serious spoilers, because not only am I going to give you a full review of Jungle Rot, I'm going to show you GMs some tips and tricks on how to run it like a pro. Jungle Rot is written by Jeremy Glipton and is designed for Modiphius's Achtung Cthulhu 2D20 system. The adventure runs about 18 pages, and while the author says it should probably take around 2 sessions to complete, I was able to finish it in just 1 session. Now, for complete disclosure, I actually ran this adventure using GURPS World War II, not Achtung Cthulhu, since I'm more familiar with that system, and I didn't have a lot of time to prep my players for a new game. But I like the 2D20 system. It's pulpy and has some really cool mechanics. But I think that you'll find that my review and thoughts on Jungle Rot will apply to whatever game system that you prefer. And honestly, this adventure is so easy to port, I could easily see GMs using it for whatever their favorite action horror system is. For example, it would work really well with Pulp Call of Cthulhu, which is another one of my favorites. The setup of the adventure is this. It's 1942 and the Battle of Guadalcanal is raging across the Pacific. The Allies have sent covert teams all throughout the Southwest Pacific Islands hunting for occult artifacts, grabbing them before the Japanese can find and use them. Now, one of these elite teams, led by renowned Navy Lieutenant Commander Russell Lee, suffered a catastrophe. While hunting for a mysterious artifact on a remote island, his team was ambushed by some Imperial Japanese soldiers. He alone survived, and he barely made his way to an Australian coast watcher, Andrew Doyle. Doyle contacted the Navy and informed them that Lee had been found. And now the PCs are immediately dispatched to rendezvous with Russ Lee and get him back to command, because the knowledge that he has about the locations of the artifacts is that important to the war effort. By the way, also key to the war effort is liking and subscribing this channel. It's the only way to keep the Axis from getting their dirty little hands on paranormal artifacts. All right, so right away that sounds like a straightforward and dangerous mission. It's a little bit Apocalypse Now and a little bit Raiders of the Lost Ark. I like it when openings of adventures immediately tell the players what they need to do and why it's important, and this adventure does that. I also like that the adventure setup gives the players opportunities to play a variety of different characters, not just soldiers alone. When I ran it, I had a mixed group of adventurers. Like I had some US Marines, I had a Gurkha who was this like tough survivalist, and I had a civilian woman who was an expert on the occult. And it all just made sense why the Navy would send all those people out to go rescue Russ Lee. The adventure is then split up into 3 acts. The first act briefs the PCs on the mission and then loads them up on the Skipjack, a US submarine that's going to take them to Lee's Island. They then have to navigate through the jungle of the island to get to Lee's location, and the adventure offers up some cool jungle dangers that the GM can unleash on the players. Things like horrible insect swarms and quicksand. And while I use the insect swarms, I always think those are cool to like annoy the players. I felt like quicksand was a little on the nose. So instead, I inserted like an old like rope bridge that crossed a very deep chasm on the island, and the PCs had to carefully navigate across that. And just as they were halfway across, they noticed there was a Japanese sniper like up on the cliffs above them, and he was sound asleep. But it was definitely a danger enough situation that they had to sneak across or figure out how to go around and take out the sniper, because if he woke up, he was going to start headshotting the PCs. Anyway, I just added a little more danger up front in this mission to kind of let the PCs know that this island was not going to be as simple as just trekking through it and rescuing Commander Lee. The first act ends when the PCs reach that Australian Doyle's camp, which is where Lee is, and I love that the adventure gives code words the PCs have to use to get access to the camp. Like, do you have any Marmite? No, just Vegemite. Like, it just cracked me up. Well done. Inside the camp, the PCs meet Lieutenant Commander Russ Lee, who's a scruffy, wild-haired operative. Now, the adventure, interestingly enough, gives you a couple ways to play him, either as a very heroic, stalwart Indiana Jones type or a crazier Kurtz type. But I actually think the best thing to do is to blend those together. Like, I like the fact that Russ Lee is unpredictable and a little bit crazy. I mean, after all, he is hunting for artifacts across the Pacific, but he isn't going to murder PCs in their sleep. Like, the player shouldn't think that this guy is dangerous, like, right away. I think if you play him straight as a hero too much, he will come across as just too competent. Like, he's just really good at everything. And I like it when my NPCs are just not as capable as the PCs. So anyway, I play him as like brave and heroic, but also like unpredictable and a little wild, just so the PCs would have to take charge at various times throughout the adventure and not just follow this guy's cues everywhere. So unpredictable Russ Lee informs the players that there's a change of plans, and that he's not going back with them on the submarine until they've helped him recover the artifact on the island that he was originally looking for. So the second act takes the PCs through the jungles again to some ancient ruins. And after locating the entrance, which of course is trapped, the PCs venture into a small series of tunnels, the remains of these ruins. And these tunnels are inhabited by man-eating cannibals. They surge from the darkness with poison-tipped spears and knives, and they just try to tear the PCs apart or grab them and like cook them. And the lead cannibal, who is this like massive headman, has a powerful eldritch wail ability which can like stun foes and cause surges of madness. Murderous cannibals, let's get them! So once the PCs defeat the cannibals in the tunnels, they'll find what they came looking for, this swirly greenish crystal, something that the Allies use with sonar to detect and, I assume, chase away deep ones. This part of the adventure was fun and frantic, like fighting in claustrophobic tunnels versus cannibals jumping out everywhere, and that kind of cannibal boss, well, he really spooked the players. But I do wish that the adventure was a little bit more specific about these ruins and these cannibals. They feel a little bit generic as presented. I wish there was more lore to the place, something that creeps the players out a little bit more and feels connected to the larger universe. So to help with this, I just tweaked the scene a little bit. I said that the cannibals were actually Vormi men, these strange Lovecraftian cavemen who like worship elder gods. And their leader was clearly partially a deep one. And this is kind of implied in the text. It fits in really nicely. And then when the players find the crystal, rather than it just lying there on the ground, I had it be inside the rotting remains of this weird fish-like abomination, like something that the cannibals had dragged in there and were worshiping and maybe taking some bites out of, kind of like an anglerfish, but where its like lure would be on top of its head. Well, that's where the crystal was. And this made the whole scene feel mysterious and weird, and my players really enjoyed it a little bit more. I also added that the crystal that the PCs recover also causes a little bit of psychological instability into whoever was carrying it. Kind of like the One Ring. Like, nobody wanted to carry this thing because they knew that it would make their characters a little bit more vulnerable to losing it. So my PCs ended up giving it to Russ Lee, which didn't work out so great at the end of the adventure, as you'll see. Act 3 pivots from weirdness to straight up World War II action. With the crystal in hand, the PCs now have to escape the island. Lee has hidden a small boat near a remote village not too far from the ruins. Unfortunately, a Japanese torpedo boat along with dozens of Japanese soldiers have just landed on the island. Now, I'm not totally clear why the skipjack, the sub that the PCs took to the island, can't just meet the PCs on the other side of the island. I mean, wouldn't the PCs be carrying a radio or have prearranged a meeting place or a backup meeting place in case something happened? And that meeting place would logically not be at the village on the island. But this is all pretty easy to tweak. You could say that the arrival of the Japanese forced the skipjack to suddenly pull back. They just can't get to the island anymore. Or maybe the PC's radio got damaged in the cannibal attack. Like maybe when that headman unleashed his crazy psionic howl on them, that just shorted out the radio. You just do something like that so it's unexpected that the PCs have to find another escape route off the island. Regardless, the PCs now need to come up with a good plan to get to this boat without attracting the attention of the whole Japanese army. This can play out in a lot of ways. I love how flexible the ending is here. Like players can stealth their way through town, or they can approach the locals who kind of just want to stay out of the war and get them to help the PCs. Or they can set up some kind of distraction and lure the soldiers away so they can get to the boat. Now, when I ran the adventure, I added a Japanese Hago tank to the perimeter of the village. I just wanted to make things a little bit extra tough on my players. And my players were super clever. They ambushed the crew while they were taking a break and then used the cannon on the tank to blow up the Japanese commander's headquarters, which gave them the distraction they needed to escape. It was pretty epic as far as finales go. There's also a little suggested subplot here where Russ Lee decides at the end of the adventure that he needs to get revenge on the Japanese here. They're the same ones that wiped out his squad, and while there doesn't seem to be any POWs, there are still some of their personal belongings that he wants to get back.
I like the plan, boys. Nice and stealthy. They'll never see us coming. And is that my favorite pair of combat boots? Screw the plan! Let's kill them! Ah!
And so when I ran this worked really well because I'd made Russ Lee going a little crazier because he was carrying that crystal. And so he totally screwed up the players' plans at the end. As they were going to take out the tank crew, I had him just decide to rush the Japanese commander's headquarters. And now he was in the line of fire and the players had to go pull him out before they used the tank, and chaos was everywhere. It was a really nice twist to kind of have that NPC lose it a little bit at the end of the adventure. But you have to set it up ahead of time. You can't just have him suddenly do it if it wasn't in his character up until that point. So leave little hints that he's crazy, or just go ahead and use that suggestion I had, which is make the crystal make him a little crazy. And if the players avoid getting killed by the Japanese army and escape to the boat with the crystal, well, they've won the day and they've provided the Allies with an important tool that they need to win the war. And that's Jungle Rot. Overall, I think this makes for a great action-packed one-shot. It's got a good blend of role-playing, especially dealing with crazy Russ Lee, exploration, creepiness, and still requires brains, not just guns, to win the day. And while I do think that some of the occult aspects of the adventure could have been fleshed out a little bit more, it's just not that hard for a GM to tweak it and make it a little bit richer in places. The whole book is well produced, it's easy to grok, easy to run without a lot of prep. I read it in about an hour and was mostly ready to go. And it feels pulpy and World War II, it combines those elements really well. The adventure kind of reminded me of the old Deadlands, like dime novel adventures, like just really tight, well-produced, condensed, and just focuses on what the players love in this genre, which is like horror and action. By the way, if you're looking for tokens and VTT assets for this adventure, you can download the ones that I made off my website, oneshotadventures.com. And that's my thoughts and advice for Jungle Rot, an intense little indie adventure for Achtung Cthulhu. If you've played or run this adventure, tell me what your experience was like in the comments below. Did your mission go as planned, or did you all end up as cannibal food? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if you're out of Marmite, go for the Vegemite.